Our customers can compete with anyone when it comes to hyperscale and efficient hardware.
How do you lead that?
Number one reason the company fails is they don't get market transitions.
Absolutely. I think the industry is going through a tremendous transformation.
Hey Jeff, thanks for having me here at your headquarters.
Thank you very much. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. You guys are having a lot of success right now, and it seems to me that ActiveVideo occupies a genuinely unique space in the cable market. Tell me about that.
Well, we think we do reside in a very unique space. You know, we're sort of riding a wave of virtualization, but we're taking it into areas that hadn't historically been really used. You know, in the television market, for one, virtualization is only now making itself known. And we took it a step further because most virtualization is really about taking network functions, moving them into the cloud. Right. And that obviously has applicability to television and video distribution in general. We take it a step further because we've always believed the problem really with innovation in television resides in basically an anchor in the home, which is the CPE that delivers the service. It stays in the home a long time. It's always been limited. It needs to be low cost because the consumer owns it and puts it in place or leases it. And we felt that was an area that we wanted to focus on. How much can we take out of the home and move it into the network? And so we've been riding this wave, and it seems to be catching on stronger and stronger and puts us in a great position.
So with your solution, do you still have a set-top box?
Yes, you know that we don't believe that you need to virtualize every function of the set-top box. There are some things that don't change very often. You know, video codecs, H.264 has been around for a long time. There are still a lot of MPEG-2 boxes out there that deliver compressed video that way. And those sorts of standards don't change very often, but they do change once in a while. As we go to 4K, HEVC is making an appearance. We believe that set-top boxes need to have the capability of decoding the video and putting it up on the television. But our virtualization strategy is really about taking things that change often and move them into the cloud, and leave the things that don't change very often in the home and leave them secure, and then optimize the network for that.
Right. So, I mean, it seems like there are a number of different ways that you can deploy the technology. I mean, I could deploy it with an existing set-top box, or I could deploy it with a sort of a ROCO solution, or I could deploy it, could I deploy it just with my television and put everything in the cloud?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, given that the television itself already decodes compressed video, that's what they do best, right? So you can use that fact and virtualize everything else, and then you can run directly to a television. But one of the real strengths, and actually how we started ActiveVideo many years ago, was to address the problem of underpowered set-top boxes. You know, we'd always heard that they'll be going away, but we've been hearing that forever. You know, they're always going away, right. And they're always behind whatever's happening on the internet. So really, our initial focus was not really to focus on virtualization, but it was to focus on enabling deployed base of devices to keep up with the internet. Right. Offer new services. That's what customers really want.
Right.
And so we're the only solution that can go out and address both the installed base and the very newest of things like connected televisions with exactly the same user experience.
Right. And what about the applications that are actually running over the network into the users' homes? I mean, are you combining traditional programming with, well, what do you combine it with? I mean, it seems like it opens the door to a number of different services.
Yeah, it really does. You know, the initial services that most operators want to be able to deliver is just a really good user experience.
Right.
And that implies a new guide. You know, a lot of the guides that are deployed out there have been out there for years. And when you've got services like Netflix that allow you to do much better, richer search, they have good recommendations, the user experience is nice to look at. So the very first application is just, can you update that? Right? And can we deliver that from the cloud? And we do.
Right.
But it has also enabled an explosion of new services. You've got, we mentioned Netflix, you've got Hulu, you've got YouTube, and more viewing is happening on these services. And when you look at it, full screen video is full screen video. It's still television, just delivered a different way. So we think the ideal solution is a combination of what you find online with what has been traditional viewing, linear television as well.
Right, so take what you need or take what you want if you're the subscriber.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating story. When did you first identify this sort of virtualized market as a potential profitable place for you to play in?
Well, ActiveVideo has been working on this problem for more than a decade. And as I said, we didn't think of it as virtualization long ago. We really thought of it as enabling new services on old devices. That was our initial focus. But what it led us to was to virtualize as much of the experience as possible in the cloud. And it's funny, I've been saying virtualized and cloud. When we started, neither one of those were popular terms, right? Nobody knew what the cloud was, nobody knew what virtualization was, and we didn't either. We were just creating a user experience that could be delivered from remote locations into the home, so it didn't rely on the devices that were there.
But it's an extraordinary story, really, because I mean, you started this over 10 years ago, 12 or more years ago. You've been working on it for all this time, and then the rest of the industry, not just the cable industry, but the networking and the next generation communications industry, is almost sort of is starting to catch up with you now. But you have this huge head start, because what you're really talking about in terms of the benefits of the technology is what everybody now wants to talk about, which is agility. It's the ability to create services in the cloud and then deploy them to subscribers without having to make any changes in the CPE, and that's what you're doing now, right?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We needed some technologies to catch up. Server scale had to get better, and it has. Network scale. I think when we started off, on this problem, thinking of, a gigabit to the home was completely unthinkable.
Right.
In fact, 10 megabits to the home was completely unthinkable. And the fact is, to virtualize, you need a good network. So we needed some other things to happen in order to enable it to the extent that it has. But those things did happen, and we always thought they would.
Yeah.
We thought video delivery would require the network to get better.
So now the issues which I guess 10 years ago people would have said, hey, the latency is going to be way too slow, the network's not going to be powerful enough, or you're never going to be able to afford that many servers in your data center to handle all this processing. Those challenges have kind of gone away at this point, have they?
Yeah, they really have.
Yeah.
Servers do hundreds, if not thousands, of simultaneous user sessions on a single server, and latency just isn't an issue. It intuitively, in the old days, you would think if you've located a server miles from the home that is viewing the content for it, it must take a long time to get a round trip to that server. But the reality is, it's consistently less than a third of a second.
So,
and if you compare that with a lot of locally rendered, user experiences, it's often faster in the cloud than it is in the home, with the added benefit that you can change it at will when it's in the cloud versus being tied to a particular device in a home.
So I guess a lot of the things which people used to raise as objections have kind of gone away now. Things like latency or server capacity, the fact that you couldn't possibly have enough servers in the cloud to handle all of these processing. Are these things not really relevant anymore? Yeah,
they're not. I mean, those early issues, I don't think they ever were as much of a problem as people thought they would be. But in reality, we have overcome both real technical problems as well as imagined ones. Starting with latency. People used to think it would take seconds to get to the cloud and back. And round trip these days, for our solution, including all of the cable infrastructure, the set-top response times, the requirements to generate video and decode video, all of that adds up to about 300 milliseconds in round-trip latency.
That's actually quicker than a lot of the latency on a regular cable network.
It is. It often takes longer than that to simply get a box to respond and draw a picture on the screen using the graphics processing. And it comes because networks have gotten really fast. There's been improvements in routing and switching technology. Obviously, it doesn't take as long to get packets through the network anymore. And then on the server side, we're talking about multi-gigahertz, multi-core CPUs for data centers that we're not even dreamed of 10 years ago.
Mind-boggling. Yeah.
And they're driven by, we're riding the coattails of what that network technology is being forced to do anyway.
Right.
Google requires lots of servers to do those search times and respond in milliseconds, like they always tell you at the end of a search.
Yeah.
And they drive the need for processors to be able to respond quickly, and we just ride that coattail.
Yeah.
So we've taken care of all those things, and then our software has gotten better over the years as well.
Well, of course, after more than 12 years working on it. I mean, we talked a little bit about your heritage and working with cable operators who have set-top boxes. What about new networks where maybe there isn't a set-top box there at all? What does that architecture look like, and same model can be applied there? Yeah,
it's a great question, because while we initially started out trying to solve an underpowered box problem, today it's a very different problem. It's the fact that if you look for a consistent experience across all kinds of devices, from the oldest to the newest, from what television is in the bedroom to the one that's in the living room, to maybe a 15-year-old digital set-top box to just a connected TV or a Roku, right? How do you do that if you're trying to put an application or a browser in the device itself? Looking at today's Roku, comparing it with a 12-year-old set-top box or a connected television from Sony or LG or Samsung, they're all entirely different. And yet you want to have the same user experience across the entire base. That's the power of virtualization. So where we started simply adding power to older underpowered devices, what we really are about is virtualizing the experience so it's exactly the same no matter what device you're using. That also enables the devices to get cheaper. So we're not talking about large multi-$100 set-top boxes anymore. You're talking $59 Rokus at retail.
Do you still find a cultural issue that some MSOs and cable operators want to hang on to the set-top box anyway, even though it doesn't necessarily make sense anymore?
I do think that. I've heard numerous times, we have to have a presence in the home. To me, the user experience is the presence, right?
Of course.
People don't subscribe to a particular service because of the type of box it runs on. People subscribe to the service because of what they see on the screen. And we think people are coming around to that. I mean, the industry is coming around to that, but there is an ingrained idea that you have to have, the name of the operator somewhere embossed on some shiny piece of plastic.
I just think it's an amazing switch up for the cable operators now that they're getting, through your technology, this incredible sort of virtualized environment where they can launch all of these innovative services. Meanwhile, over on the sort of traditional network operator side, they're still wrestling with the issue of how to virtualize, enterprise CP, but you're already virtualizing consumer CP. I mean, who would have thought it, that the cable operators would be leading the charge in this way? It's a remarkable story.
Yeah, I would think nobody would have thought it.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
But when
apart from you, because you spotted this coming, so congratulations on that.
Yeah. But I think to a real deployment that we have, we deliver YouTube to an LGI system, Liberty Global system in Hungary, as an example. One of the requirements to deliver YouTube is that YouTube wants to be able to change their UI as often as they wish, and they have. You look at what's deployed there. You go to bed at night, you wake up the next day, you may have an entirely different user experience that's there, and it changes all the time. Compare that to, literally one time I remember being in a meeting with an operator who said, we were talking about a font on a guide that they didn't like and they wanted to change, and that was an 18-month process. And that again is the power of virtualizing the experience in the cloud. It's easy to change it as often as you like, and you can give third parties the ability to do that. One of the other challenges with a set-top owned and operated by an operator is, how do you run a third-party service like a Hulu or a Netflix or a YouTube? Do you let them come in and put software in your box? And then what if it breaks? Who gets the phone call? There's all those kinds of issues that come up when you're trying to do too much in the CP.
Yeah, exactly. Well, light reading and heavy reading are both big fans of your company. We're not the only ones. You were acquired, by Charter and Eris, I think this year. It was in April. What are the benefits of that deal to you?
Well, I think first of all, they're both great companies, and we were working with both prior to the acquisition. But first of all, Charter is a large and growing operator, very well respected, and they've announced very publicly that they're using our technology to deliver their next gen user experience. So we think, number one, having not just a customer that uses your technology, but someone who believes in it enough to actually co-acquire the company, clearly is a stake in the ground for other operators that the technology works. Yeah. Any of those lingering questions like we talked about earlier, latency, scalability, those kinds of questions obviously have to have been answered for that to happen. The other is, as a small Silicon Valley company trying to completely change the way an operator does business, you need heft behind you. You need stability. You need respect from the industry. And Eris, as a longtime supplier to the industry, has that respect. So it really gives us access to more customers and credibility that we never had before. So we think it's been a very good acquisition for us.
Yeah. I mean, you've been with this company for a long time, and
Yes, I have.
It's been through huge changes. I mean, an acquisition is always a big change. What is your hope for the company over the next few years? Where do you want it to go, and where are you leading it?
Well, I feel we've spent the last decade trying to prove that CPE virtualization has a place in cable, scales, is cost effective, and is a benefit to consumers. I think we've done that.
Right.
Now I think with our new backing from our new ownership, I think we have the chance to really deploy this worldwide and get it involved in a lot more networks and to a lot more consumers' homes. Yeah. And that's what everybody here really wants to see. You want to see your work prosper and to see benefit from that being reached by subscribers, and I think we're almost there.
So Jeff, we talked a lot about cable and MSO operators today, but what about other types of operators? Is this technology relevant to them as well?
Oh, sure. The technology is completely IP-based, and it always has been. Our initial focus was on cable primarily because they had the user base. They really had the volume. But the fact is that it's an IP system. It's meant to serve video over IP. We can convert to QAM, or we can stay in IP all the way. So it's absolutely relevant to IP networks and whatever comes out in the future as well. In fact, we already have some IP deployments. One of our very first deployments was the PCCW in Hong Kong, is an all IP system.
Oh, really?
And we also have a deployment with KPN in Holland. Okay. That is fiber to the home. It works out great.
Okay. You have I guess about 8 or 20 million subscribers right now?
I think we're about 10.
10 million. So you got another 790 million available to use the technology. It seems like given that you're the only people doing this, that seems like pretty significant upside.
I think we do have some upside, and we're excited to be tackling it.
Okay. Congratulations, Jeff. It's really great to meet you, and congratulations on doing something genuinely disruptive in our industry. It's fantastic to watch.
Thanks a lot. I certainly appreciate talking with you today.
Our customers compete with anyone when it comes to hyperscale and efficient hardware.
How do you lead that? Number one reason a company fails is they don't get market transitions.
Absolutely. I think the industry is going through a tremendous transformation.